Marshal Iwaasa was a 26-year-old college student from Calgary, Alberta. A shy, hard-working man, according to those who knew him best. His family was shocked when his truck was found burned deep in the wilderness of British Columbia, with his belongings scattered around it. Welcome to Fact and Suspicion. I'm your host, Dan, here with my co-host, Ben, and it's been a while.
That it has, Dan, and we should probably start by apologizing for that. It's been nearly a year since our last episode.
It has.
I promise you, there is actually a good reason this time. It's not just sheer laziness on our part.
No, it was not laziness, and I'll explain what happened. Shortly after we recorded our last episode, my wife started having medical issues with her pregnancy, and she went to the hospital. We had a short hospital stay. My daughter was born 12 weeks early. She weighed 1 pound, 15 ounces, and we had a lengthy NICU stay, and it's just been sort of a whirlwind since then. She's doing great now. She's gained a lot of weight. Everything's wonderful, but it's just been a lot of going back and forth to the doctor, going to specialists, some appointments are a couple hours away sometimes, and it's just been crazy like that. And it's been hard to get back started on this, but we're here now.
Yeah, like we know it's been difficult times being a Fact and Suspicion fan because we have not been that reliable at times. But we wanted to assure you that we did have a pretty good reason for this. And for the time being, at least, this is going to be an audio-only podcast. We just don't have the time to go back to video yet, but we do plan to get back to weekly uploads.
Right, and I feel like a big part of the problem with, some of our viewership dropped off when we went to video, and I think it's because everybody was seeing my face every week, and they just didn't want to see that. So, we need to get away from that for a little while, maybe. Maybe we can do some CG on me next time.
We do plan to go back to video eventually once we get some better equipment. But for the time being, with the time we have, this is just easier. So,
well, let's get back into another case, though. I know nobody wants to hear about us all the time, but just so you know, that's what happened, and it's been crazy, but we're back to semi-normal now.
Yeah,
so.
There's your update, folks. So what about the case, Dan? Marshal
Iwaasa, as I was just saying, he was 26 years old. He lived in Calgary, Alberta. Now, he mostly worked blue-collar, roughneck type jobs.
Okay, before you go any further, are you saying Marshal Iwaasa?
Marshal Iwaasa.
Okay,
yes.
Making sure.
Yes. I said he was 26 years old, and he had recently decided to start a college program. Mm-hmm. So he's working his blue collar jobs. He rented a basement apartment from a family, mm-hmm. and he got into a college program. Now, from some accounts, was an IT program.
Okay, yeah.
Or from some other accounts, it was computer programming. It was something to do with computer technology.
Right.
Not positive about that. It's been some differing accounts, but that's what he was doing. Now, he was originally from Lethbridge, Alberta, and that was about 2 hours away from Calgary, where he had moved. And right before he went missing, he had gone back to Lethbridge to visit with his mother. Now, this was on November 17th. It was the last time he was seen. He had driven a couple hours down to Lethbridge, and he had a visit with his mom. He worked on her computer a bit. She was having some trouble. And he left there about 11 p.m. going back to Calgary.
And how long was that drive?
About 2 hours. About 2 hours. And his mom tried to get him to stay because it was so late. And he said, no, I've got to get back.
We've heard that story before.
Yeah, we have. Now, here's where things start to get a little wild. Apparently, when he left his mom's house, he went to his storage facility in Lethbridge. He had a basic storage
right.
facility.
Do we have any idea what he was looking for?
Well, yes. According to his mom, he was heading over there to find, it was either a part for a computer or a warranty for one of his computers or computer parts, something along those lines. Something was broken and he was trying to get repaired, according to her.
Right.
Now, between 11:30 p.m. and 3 o'clock a.m., he tried multiple times to get into the facility. He had a code to enter on a keypad to get in. And I guess he didn't realize that it closed at 11 p.m. and didn't open back up till 6 a.m.
Okay, gotcha.
So again, multiple times between 11:30 and 3 a.m., which is strange. He just kept doing it, right, and didn't leave. You'd think maybe he'd go back to his mom's house and stay and then go in the morning, something like that.
So he couldn't actually access it until
Right, until
Normal
6
operating
a.m.
hours? Okay.
Right, which he does right after 6 a.m. He gets in.
Oh, okay.
Now, there's no CCTV footage of this. It's just all we have is the
Codes?
the time codes.
Okay.
There was CCTV there, but the problem is that by the time he was reported missing, it had already erased itself and re-recorded over it.
Such a shame.
So we don't know exactly what happened. Now, he was there until about 8:30 a.m. when he left again with his code.
Okay.
So he was there for quite a while, 2.5 hours. And you got to already think this is kind of strange. He seems to have stayed the night in his truck outside the storage facility waiting to get in. It seems a little weird.
Right.
Maybe, right? Maybe some sort of desperation to get in. We don't know.
Yeah, that does seem strange. And how far was this away from his mother's home?
I'm not sure exactly, but it was in Lethbridge. It was very close.
It was close
to
enough.
house.
He could have just gone back and slept there. And
Yeah. It was definitely it was a facility he shared with his sister and I think his mom as well.
Okay.
So it's like a family storage facility that was there. Now his sister was living in Hawaii now, but they were all from Lethbridge, and that's where they had rented the facility, and it was right there at home, basically
But
at home.
the point is, it was close enough that it doesn't make a lot of sense why he would have just chosen to stay there.
Exactly. It was really strange. Now, November 23rd, his truck is found off of a trailhead near Pemberton, British Columbia. Now, Pemberton is over 12 hours from Lethbridge.
Okay.
It's over 10 hours from Calgary. So if he did go back to Calgary after this, it's still 10 hours from there. And this is the thing. It wasn't just off the beaten path. This was on a trailhead miles and miles off of any regular road.
Okay, so some obvious questions. Do we have any idea whether he went home first and then went?
No, we
Anyone see
don't.
him?
We don't know if he went back to Calgary or not.
And
The family said they hadn't seen him, but they didn't. I mean, he was able to get in and out without
Right.
coming through their part of the house, so they wouldn't have necessarily noticed him being there or not.
okay, and this place where they found his vehicle, was this a place he was known to go?
No. Now he was known to go hiking and camping sometimes, but it was always with his friends and always in Alberta, not so far away in British Columbia.
Right.
Also, this was a really hard place to get to. Generally, only hikers got to this place. Once these hikers on the 23rd found his truck, it took the RCMP 2 days to actually find it themselves and get out there.
Jesus.
Damaged a lot of vehicles just trying to get to it. This is something where you need, like 4-wheel drive ATVs or something to go in.
Right.
And his just truck was there, right? It was a GMC Sierra. I don't know if it's 4-wheel drive, but still, like a regular vehicle like this, you wouldn't want to drive up there.
Right, exactly.
The vehicle was found burned. All the doors were open, which speaks to arson. Usually
Right,
you would open
yeah.
all the doors up to let air in.
Makes sense.
The steering column had been removed. And a lot of his belongings that were, apparently probably in the truck were scattered around
Like
the vehicle.
outside of the vehicle?
Mhm, yes. It was very strange. They found no traces of Marshall. And they were only able to identify it was Marshall's because of his belongings.
Right.
They found a couple of his passports. Now, that's not super weird. His sister said that he kept his passports in his truck.
Okay. Makes sense.
They found 3 cell phones. But again, this was not weird for Marshall. He went through cell phones a lot. Like, they tend to get broken, or he went with the pay-as-you-go type plans. And sometimes he wouldn't even have service. So he would just, like get minutes when he wanted to. But he usually just worked off of Wi-Fi. And he talked to people on Snapchat or something like that, email.
Okay.
He didn't really make a lot of phone calls, right? So it's not weird that he had three of those. There was a laptop there, but apparently it was an old laptop that was broken. They found a PlayStation and Xbox. I'm not sure which model of each one it was. But according to several articles, they were not functional. They actually were just shells of a PlayStation and Xbox.
Maybe something he was trying to fix and resell.
Maybe, but you also have to realize that sometimes people tend to smuggle drugs in those.
Oh, did not know that.
So I don't know.
Is that a possibility the police have considered?
Not really. The police really don't think this was anything as strange as this was. They think there was no sign of foul play at all, even though it appeared to be arson.
Wait, so they found a truck that appears to have been burned, and the steering column was missing, and all of its belongings scattered outside of it, and they didn't consider this evidence of foul play.
Apparently not. Well, we'll get into that. Like as I said, let's just set the scene here. The truck was burned, steering column removed, which sometimes can be because to remove DNA.
Okay.
Possibly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Lots of his belongings were strewn around the scene. We had identification. We had a laptop. We had cell phones. Marshall. Now, some people thought, well, was he having financial trouble or something like that? Burn the truck because of that.
Right.
The truck had recently been paid off, so probably not
There
that.
goes that theory then.
Right. And no one really knew why he would have done this anyway. Now, they searched for him for 5 days in the area. They used cadaver dogs, lots of stuff, and they found no trace of him. Now, there were, strangely enough, bits of burnt clothing leading away from the vehicle toward a creek.
Okay.
His mother identified the clothing as his, but it's really hard to say if it necessarily was his clothing because it was mostly burnt.
Right.
But they didn't find any of his remains around the creek or anything like that. So, I mean, there was no real evidence that Marshall was actually there, just that his vehicle and some of his belongings were.
Does it appear that they did an adequate search?
No, not really. And there could be multiple reasons why, but it seemed like maybe it was something to do with the fact that the truck was so far out into the wilderness that any police department to get out there, it was very difficult.
Yeah.
Also, there was a lot of discussion between the Pemberton, BC department and Lethbridge, because Lethbridge was the last place he was
like
seen.
A jurisdiction question then?
A jurisdiction question, right. Lethbridge was the last place he was seen, but the truck was found near Pemberton, so who's supposed to handle it?
Yeah,
right?
okay, fair.
At any rate, the RCMP investigates, but they say they find no evidence of foul play. They don't find evidence of arson. They don't find any bullet holes, no evidence of a struggle.
Okay, so if they say there's no evidence of arson, what's their explanation for how the truck caught on fire?
Don't know.
Well, wouldn't you need an explanation for how the truck caught on fire to rule out?
You would think so, right? Well, I don't know that they necessarily ruled out arson, but what if he set the fire himself? There was no sign of violence, at least.
I mean, that'd still be arson, wouldn't it?
Right. I don't know the logic behind this. I just know they really didn't investigate further than that.
Okay.
Now, after 5 days, there was a winter storm. They called off the search, and they just left the truck out there. They didn't bring it in to
investigate,
take it apart
for evidence,
or do a thorough search of it or anything like that. They just searched through it on the scene.
So they never had a DNA team look through it.
Exactly, and they just left it out there in the open for DNA. I mean, they could have searched it for DNA a bit, but they obviously, as you'll see in a few minutes, didn't do a very thorough search of the car.
Jesus. And they just left it to the mercy of the elements after that?
Just left it out there. Now, there was never a suicide note found.
Okay.
So you wouldn't suspect suicide because of that. However, the RCMP did believe this could have been suicide. One, because everyone reported Marshall was such a shy person. They thought maybe he was having mental, some mental instability, emotional problems, something like that. But his family said that's just the way he always had been. He was always very shy. He didn't even always talk to them about everything. Right.
Okay.
And beyond that, the RCMP found out that he had not enrolled in classes for the next semester at school.
And he was supposed to?
And, well, you would assume he would have to keep going with the program, but he hadn't.
Did he say anything to his parents about dropping out?
No, he hadn't said anything to his family about it. But again, they don't think that was so strange for him because sometimes he just didn't bring things up.
Okay.
Right. And plus, he's a grown man. He's paying for it himself. It's not that he owes them an explanation. Or
yeah. Okay.
like
Yeah. Fair.
So it's really hard to say that because he didn't say that says that he was going to go commit suicide.
Right.
So the RCMP, they don't think there's anything that seems like foul play.
Okay.
But the family doesn't believe that. They really want this to be investigated further.
Yeah, I can understand why.
So they actually hire a private investigator to go up to the scene.
Okay.
Now, this definitely shows the police did not investigate very well because the private eye gets there and starts looking at the vehicle. There are ashes still on the floorboard. They didn't even clear the debris from the floorboard.
Jesus.
And in the floorboard, they found a Zippo lighter, which was what was used to start the fire. but the police never found that either.
So, wait, I mean, a DNA test of that could have determined perhaps who started the fire. Whether at least it could have determined whether it was him or a third party.
Maybe, though, the fire probably destroyed the DNA.
Yeah,
It's hard to say. Though, they could have at least searched for any kind of blood, bullet holes in the floorboard.
Presumably, if someone else started the fire, he'd have had to have been incapacitated.
Right, or not even there, actually.
Yeah, fair.
It's just, there's so many inconsistencies about this. Also, a really strange thing is when the hikers found this, all the belongings were scattered around. But when the RCMP gets there and they take photos, the belongings are kind of piled up in different piles. It's almost like someone else was there, maybe went through it.
And the police didn't do this at the scene the first time?
According to them, no.
Okay.
So that's pretty weird, but you can't necessarily say that was foul play because another group of hikers could have just come across this and been, rummaging through stuff, right? Looking around. Now, so it's hard to say for me that this doesn't show some sort of foul play, right?
Yeah, of course.
I don't understand where they got that. Let's talk about what was there again. You had the cell phones, damaged cell phones, the damaged laptop, the PlayStation and Xbox shells,
right?
That didn't appear to be his because he had a PlayStation and Xbox back at his apartment still.
Okay.
It just seems really strange. A lot of strange stuff there, right?
Agreed.
Now they never found his wallet or his glasses or his contacts, which was kind of strange. They weren't back at his apartment and they weren't found in the belongings.
Okay.
So maybe that's something he had on him at the time. We don't know. Now, Marshal Iwaasa did like to go camping and hiking, usually more around somewhere he lived, around Alberta.
This would have been pretty big deviation from his norm.
Right. But also, all of his camping gear was still in the storage facility.
Now, that's interesting.
Exactly. Right? If he was going to go here,
why would he gone, too.
He had just been there. Now, they don't see the RCMP doesn't think this was arson. This seems to me, obviously, it was arson. Right? I mean, the steering column's removed.
Yeah.
There's a Zippo lighter. All the doors are open.
Right.
How is this not arson?
I tend to agree. I mean,
Okay.
Sometimes I'm not a fire investigator. I don't know much about it, but.
Right. And Marshall's family has been trying to have this deemed as a criminal case to get it looked into more, but the RCMP has never wanted to do that. Who knows why? Maybe because they just didn't investigate at the beginning. They dropped the ball on it and they don't want to, look bad.
Exactly. It happens more than we'd like to.
Exactly. But let's talk about what could have happened here, right?
Did he have any known enemies?
Not that anyone knows of. No. And they don't know of him to be involved in drugs either.
Okay.
Which is something you would think about. But some people think that Marshall may have wanted to disappear.
Okay.
Just want to go off and start a new life and didn't tell his family. That seems to me like a big supposition.
I mean, it always is in these kind of cases. It's always an option, but it rarely ever seems conceivable to me. If somebody would just take off one day without telling anyone.
I don't think that happened here. And he would have just dumped his truck, and he didn't have any big withdrawals from his bank account. He didn't have any banking activity for 2 days before his no activity in his bank account at all after 2 days before he was last seen.
Okay. Yeah.
And you got to think about if he drove that truck 10, 12 hours.
Should have been gas charges.
How many times would he have had to buy fuel? I guess he could have used cash.
Possible, yes. Was he known to carry cash around? Is that?
It's hard to say. Like, his family wasn't sure if he would have been carrying cash or not. It's possible he could have been carrying cash, but he also used a debit card.
Because this happened, like if the same thing happened to me, that'd be very suspicious. Because everyone knows I don't carry cash on me at all, ever.
Right. Well, and I carry cash a lot. I very rarely use a debit card. So, people would know that about me too, though.
Right.
But, they also checked CCTV footage on routes from Lethbridge to Pemberton and from Calgary to Pemberton, trying to find footage of Marshall or his truck, and they never found any of it anywhere. Now, that doesn't mean a lot to me because there's so many ways they could have driven, so many different places someone could have stopped to get gas.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense to just assume you can find that on that kind of long trip. This is not just a barren wasteland, right?
Yeah.
Or at least not all of it. I'm sure part of it is actually. But, right, so they didn't find any evidence there. Fine. Now, we also have the theory that this was a wrong place, wrong time sort of scenario.
Okay.
And it seems to me that would have had to have happened at the storage facility.
Yeah, because what are the odds that he would have been the other place deliberately?
Exactly. Well, obviously, I mean, maybe it could have happened somewhere else and then
Yeah,
they
in
went
between.
there. But the way he stayed at that storage facility all night long trying to get in,
Does seem strange.
it's almost like someone saw him trying to get in and decided they wanted what was in that storage facility.
Right.
I don't know, but it's a good idea, I think, especially if someone noticed him, going multiple times trying to get in that storage facility and like, oh, there's something in there. Maybe they try to get in there.
Were there any other attempts to open storage facilities?
No,
around that same time where he was there.
Well, there could have been later on in the morning, but nothing around there at 6 a.m.
Okay.
And he had not accessed that for months in advance of this.
All right.
So it's not like he could have, stored some drugs there a couple weeks before for a big pickup, right? That doesn't make sense. Anything that he was trying to access would have been there for months at least.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, maybe someone saw him there trying to get in, thought they could rob him. It's possible. But even if that is what happened, why would his truck end up 12 hours away? Who's going to try to, get rid of a vehicle that far away? Mm-hmm. So that doesn't make any sense.
That does seem very strange, yes.
And then you have the theory that maybe he was involved in something, like I just said, with the drugs, like something like that. Because you can smuggle drugs in gaming consoles. That's something that's been done for years.
Okay.
But they didn't find any drugs in those consoles. They didn't find any drugs laid out there where all his things were scattered about.
Did they bring any dogs in to check for like the remnants of drugs?
They brought in cadaver dogs. They didn't bring anything else like that. I mean, like I said, the RCMP really wasn't looking at it that way, that it was a murder, right? So they're not going to do that. And I imagine it would be pretty difficult to bring all different kinds of dogs up hours away from civilization.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Where you have to basically take ATVs to get up there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So you have all these questions. How did his truck get there? Did he take the truck there? Did he go up there to commit suicide? Well, they never found his body. They found the burnt clothes leading away from it, but would he set a fire to commit suicide?
Doesn't seem likely. Seems like a terrible way to kill yourself. And, I mean, they found burnt clothing towards the lake, right?
Yeah, toward the creek.
So he would have had to have set himself on fire first and then walked
ran
to the
toward
creek.
it. Yeah. I mean, I guess it could have been an accidental fire.
Maybe.
I highly doubt it, though.
If that were the case and he died from that, surely his body would have been in a reasonable proximity of.
You would think so, right? Of course, this is the wilderness, and they didn't find him in the first 5 days. And there's a big winter storm. You're probably not going to find him after that.
What I'm saying is, it seems like there's only so far he could have gotten, particularly if he had just been on fire.
No, I completely agree. I don't think he could have gotten very far at all. But we don't know if that was even what happened with the clothes, right?
Right, yeah.
Like the clothes could have burned up, and then maybe an animal drug them around, for all we know. But the fact that the steering column was missing, really strange.
Just really suspicious.
So there's another theory about this, though, that, well, this is not necessarily how it happened, but maybe the truck was just left there and some hikers came across it and decided to just go through everything in it and then set the truck on fire for fun. I
mean, maybe. But...
And they theorized they could have taken the steering column because they wanted to sell the airbag.
Okay, that seems like a stretch to me.
It does to me, too. You would not believe how many people I've seen point out that you can sell airbags for a decent bit of money. But who out hiking in the middle of nowhere
is going to have even the tools to take out a steering column?
Or happen to have the know-how of how to remove it?
Right.
Apparently it's not that hard, but not your average Joe doesn't know how to do that.
The convergence of things that would have to take place for a person with the knowledge, experience, and particular tools to do that. It just...
And how many groups of hikers were going to come across this in those few days?
Yeah.
Now, there were some hikers renting a nearby cabin in that area that like it's out in the middle of nowhere. You have to hike to the cabin. And that was the ones that found it, right? But they weren't really suspected of anything. They turned it in.
Right.
There was no evidence that they had killed Marshall.
I mean, this just seems really unsatisfying.
It really is. And it's something that just you have more questions the more you look at it. Yeah. Right.
Did the family ever hire like a private investigator?
Well, they did. They did hire the private investigator to look into it. Okay, remember, they determined that it was arson. The investigator did. But you really need the RCMP to look into it more thoroughly. Right. Now, a big problem with this is the family, and the media have requested information about this from the RCMP, and they say they can't release it because it's an ongoing investigation. But apparently they seem to have closed this investigation already, saying that it was...
Why do they always pull that same BS excuse? It's an ongoing investigation. It's an ongoing... When we know that you're not actually investigating it any longer.
I think
it's just a way not to have to share your files with anybody.
I agree. And I think it's a reaction to what we're doing right now.
Right, yeah.
This is a reaction to internet sleuthing culture, to crime podcasts, everything like that, right? They don't want to give out any information because everyone else will pick it apart and prove how they were wrong.
Well,
I
mean,
exactly.
I don't see the problem with that personally.
To me, though, this is one of the strangest mysteries I've come across, just because how would this ever happen? How would his truck get up there? How would he even know to get there?
Yeah.
Like, this is not somewhere you can get without knowing where you're going.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I guess you could just make random turn after random turn.
Just get lost and
get lost. Up there. But Marshall was not a dumb person. Like, he would have turned back when the road got that bad.
Right.
Exactly. And why would he have been 12 hours away there anyway?
Yeah, that's...
No camping gear. And they say some of the belongings they found didn't even belong to him. There was a cooler labeled with the name Cody Lewis that none of his family could identify, or they didn't know who it could belong to.
They never found a Cody Lewis that was missing a cooler?
No. Well, not in this investigation.
Right.
Not that was attached to Marshall in any way.
Hmm.
So it's really strange. A lot of questions. And I feel like something major had to have happened here. And I also feel like seeing cases like this, it makes me wonder about Calgary being a lot more dangerous. Alberta being a lot more dangerous than most people would think. Because you remember the Lindsay Busiak case?
Yeah, I do.
Remember how she had visited her father? It was either I think it was in Edmonton. It may have been Alberta. I think it was in Edmonton a few days before she was killed.
Yeah, she was the realtor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that apparently it seemed to be a hit put out on her because they thought she came across something about drugs in...
Right.
I think it was Edmonton at the time, right? God, it's just crazy because I always think of Canada, especially rural Canada, as being a very safe place, right?
As Americans, it's probably pretty odd for us to think of Canada as the dangerous place.
It is, right? But this is such a strange mystery to me and something I really want more info on. I don't know if it's ever going to come. Now, there are some strange sort of, I hate to say parallels, but there's some ties to this and another disappearance around the same time.
Really?
And it's not something I want to get into right now because it honestly, it seems tenuous at best, right? But if it's something that you guys want to hear, I'll do an episode on this other disappearance as well. But maybe leave a comment about that and let us know. But I didn't want to get into it with this one because I don't want to bog this case down with a bunch of really crazy suppositions.
Right.
But we can get into that if that's something people want.
Okay.
But this one, I just wanted to come back with a major mystery this time. And no one knows what happened.
It's definitely suspicious. The steering column particularly just seems so bizarre to me. That's a weird detail.
I think someone had to have taken that out on purpose. I think Marshall had to have been murdered.
I mean, you don't remove a steering column by accident.
I think that Marshall was probably murdered, but not near the scene where the truck was found.
So you think probably it happened back and...
I'm not saying it happened near Lethbridge. It could have happened hours away from there, right? I don't know why anyone would have taken the truck that far to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But if you're going to, why take a body that far with you?
Yeah,
or a live hostage, for that matter. I mean, that would be so dumb to do that. I think it would be.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Now some people point out, like, it would be dumb for a murderer to transport the vehicle that far to get rid of it, because what if they got pulled over? But I mean, that's just that seems to me like, I mean, why would they be pulled over?
Right.
I mean, if you're driving, say if you don't have a blinker out or something, or they haven't, reported the truck missing, why would you be worried about it? But to me, it's such a mystery as how the truck got up there. I don't know. But I don't think Marshall's ever at the site. It did seem strange, though, that his belongings were scattered around. Now, it is possible that a group of hikers came on it and just set the truck on fire for fun.
It still doesn't seem very likely to me.
It doesn't to me either. So this is the Marshal Iwaasa disappearance. I know this is not one that has a lot of satisfying answers, but it's a major mystery. And something I want to get back to doing was mysteries.
I mean, we don't tend to deal in satisfying answers.
Oh, that's true. But we've had some cases that have been closed we've dealt with. And I like closed cases too, but God, I like a good mystery. And this is something, I'd like to get some people's input on if you've studied this case, because I love hearing your theories on this particular one or, anything that's mysterious. But I'm glad to be back.
Same. Been fun.
And we'll be back next week with another episode. God, I hope we are.
We should be.
Hopefully we won't have any malfunctions between now and then. No hardware, no mic issues.
Yeah.
And definitely no camera issues.
Don't jinx it. Well, there certainly won't be any camera issues.
No.
There are no cameras. So.
All right. Well, I guess this is us signing off for our first episode in a year. But we'd love it if you'd interact somehow, leave a like, leave a comment, anything like that. And thanks for coming back listening.
All right. Thanks very much.